Everybody, happy Wednesday, hump day, as they say. Good to see you. It just seems like hump day doesn't mean what it used to mean, right? I mean, it's just crazy how, as we're going through this, everything seems to run together. Maybe it's not the way it is for you. It certainly has been the way here, where it used to be Tammy would complain if I was working on the weekends, and now we can't really figure out when the weekends are. So if that's not the case with you, happy hump day, and I hope everything is going great with everybody. Great to see you. Thank you for joining me today on Daily Distinction. Glad that you are here. Got some, yes, it is, Darcy, it is hump day today, absolutely. And here you go. Oh, you've been reviewing a lot of the podcast episodes. That's great, Brian. Our announcement got delayed, but we've got an announcement that's going to be coming maybe Friday, maybe next week. We're trying to get the final details put together with some new episodes and some good stuff happening, and a new syndicator and a bunch of good stuff going on. So, Sonia, my favorite fourth day of the week. Yes, good to see you, Sonia. Glad that you're here. Thanks so much for being around. And by the way, if you're watching on replay, I want to say again how much I truly appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that shares this out. Even if you're watching on replay, please share it, because that's how we continue to grow our numbers of folks that are watching and being involved with Daily Distinction. So thanks a lot for that. Got an important topic today. It is about overachieving. What's wrong with overachievement, right? I mean, if you're an overachiever, what's wrong with that? Well, a recent study released by Harvard talked about some of the things that can be wrong as leaders try to overachieve. So we're going to talk about that and some of the pitfalls of overachievement. And it's not just about leadership. It's about self-awareness. We're going to talk some about self-awareness today, because I think that's an important thing to talk about. You ready for the weekend, Scott? We're almost there, man. It's Wednesday. Hang on, just hang on through Thursday, and we're getting there. That's for sure. Beautiful, warm San Jose. Yes, hump day every day. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. Weldon, so great to see you as always. Thank you for being here today. Hey, before we get on the topic of overachievement, let me remind you about the Ultimate Business Summit coming up August 13th and 14th. Love to see you there. It's the regular price is $197 for a general ticket. $497 gets you the VIP, which is a special session the night before, and lunch with Simon Bailey, the former Disney executive. Going to talk about leadership there. You get the recording of the entire program, going to get a transcript of the program. There's all kinds of things that you're going to get for the VIP program. And all you need to do is enter the coupon code Scott when you're checking out. Just enter my first name, Scott, and it gets you $100 off, which means that with the coupon, it's only $97 for general admission. VIP is only $397. We would love to see you at the Ultimate Business Summit. And the reminder, too, that yesterday we talked about our new program called post-pandemic events. If you're involved in any kind of event planning or speaking, or even how do you connect better with selling online than you have before, this is a program that's going to help you with that. Post-pandemic events, you can find out about it. Just go to postpandemicevents.com. And we haven't opened up the cart for the program yet, but you can sign up. We're only going to have it open for a short period of time, but you'll learn more about it. Just go to postpandemicevents.com. Weldon, you signed up for UBS. I'm so excited about that. You're going to have a great time. We had our earlier this morning, we had our meeting of our intensive group, which is a group that invests in a follow-up program. We're not going to be doing that this coming year, because this is the very last UBS program ever. We'll each have our own projects, but we are not going to have a group project. So today was the last call for that group. But part of what makes UBS successful, I think, in part, is that those folks then say, and they're all entrepreneurs. It's, landscapers and, chimney sweeps and training consultants and on and on. I mean, pest management, entrepreneurs, blue collar entrepreneurs. And so they tell us what's going on and what we need to be talking about for UBS. So it's not some pie in the sky kind of thing. It's really our chance to, use those folks and Charles has been there. Charles knows the drill. It's our chance to learn from them about what we need to be focusing on and talking about. So that's part of, I think, the great success of UBS was the fact that it's based on what entrepreneurs are having challenges with and want to know, not just what somebody wants to talk about. So overachievement, what's wrong with it? Could there be something wrong with overachieving? And the answer is yes, if you're not self-aware. You know what I mean by that? In that, have you ever worked with somebody, or have you ever worked for somebody that one of the things you talked about in the office or one of the things you talked about on the job site was they just don't get it? You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever had a boss that you just thought, man, they just don't understand? One of the things that has been discovered in recent research is that some very talented leaders can crash and burn because they keep putting ever more pressure on employees and themselves to produce, to the point it cracks. And they're not aware enough of how their constant pushing isn't getting more results. Instead, it's building more resentment. Yeah, the people that just can't. Yeah, I get it, Charles. And so that's what we have to be afraid of, is that in our drive for achievement, we overdo it. You've heard me talk about the time I had the privilege of having dinner with the late Dr. Wayne Oates in Louisville, who is the person who coined the term workaholic. And he said one of the surprising things was that workaholics didn't get more done. It's just they were addicted to the activity. They were addicted to the work. And I think we see this a lot of times, is that some very talented people can end up crashing and burning because they keep putting pressure on themselves. They keep putting pressure on employees. They just aren't getting it in terms of the self-awareness. The Harvard report said that people with high achievement drives tend to like challenging projects that allow them to accomplish something new. That's a great thing. But sometimes as leaders, we can fall into traps. So part of what the Harvard study talked about, it's in the most recent issue of Harvard Business Review, is that there are 6 styles of leadership. So here are the 6 styles. And I want us to just first off think about these styles, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look at them and see where they can go wrong, right? Because it's not just that these are good styles, it's that there can be things that are wrong about them. The first style is called the directive style. That entails a strong and sometimes coercive behavior. Here's what we're going to do. My way or the highway. Now, these folks are very clear about what needs to be done. And they're very clear in terms of letting their team know what needs to be done. There's not a lot of ambiguity when we're talking about this directive style. The second is the visionary. The visionary focuses on clarity and communication, but they see things as they should be, and then they communicate that vision clearly to the rest of their team. Next, we have the affiliative. They want to make sure that everybody gets along. They want to make sure that there's harmony within the team. They focus a lot on culture and the relationships in the organization. We have the participative. They want to make sure that everybody has a voice. They look for a collaborative environment, very democratic in terms of what does the group want to do. And then we have the pace setting, which is characterized by personal heroics. We have seen those pace setting leaders from, Jeff Bezos at Amazon to, probably the greatest example, Steve Jobs at Apple. The pace setters. They are out front. The company is known in some ways by the CEO or by the person, the founder, right? We still hear about what Herb Kelleher did at Southwest Airlines, even though he hasn't worked for the airline for a long time, but he's even passed away a while back, but he's still kind of what you think of when you think of Southwest Airlines. And then we have the coaching style, which focuses on the long-term development and mentoring of people, of the team. So each of these styles has its strengths, but obviously each of these styles have a weakness as well. So, Charles was the Ultimate Business Intensive Group. Yeah, great group of folks, and yeah, I'm sad it's winded down as well. Charles, you're exactly right. You are exactly right. Let's take a look at each of these styles, and we'll see the positives and negatives. And I'd like for you to think of someone that you know that exemplifies the style as we talk about it. And maybe it's you. Maybe it's you. As we talk about the style, maybe you're the person that fits into one of these. The directive. Okay, there are strengths to the directive. Nobody has to wonder what to do. Nobody has to wonder what their role is. Nobody has to wonder what their job's about when you have a directive leader. The directive leader makes it very clear about what your job is. That's a strength. There's not confusion. Yet there can also be the weakness here, obviously. Because if someone is overly directive, as you see here, sometimes coercive behavior, it's my way or the highway. I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to do it my way. And there is a point where people get burned out by that, right? I mean, hey, I've been doing this a while. I've got a couple ideas. I'd kind of like to, people kind of get worn out. And it's not necessarily that they quit or go someplace else. It's that they tune out and they don't feel engaged. On previous episodes of Daily Distinction, we talked about how much more productive than engaged employees are as opposed to those that just show up and put in their time. All of us want employees, team members who are engaged. But if we're always telling them what to do, how to do it, when it's going to be done, and overly directive, that's a problem. Hey, Pam makes a great point. Employees don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. That is so good, Pam. You are so right. And that's what happens, right? Hey, if you love your boss, and there's the thing, companies want to preach about company loyalty all the time, and employees aren't loyal to the company as much as they're loyal to the person they work for and the team they work with. So, absolute key. Remember this. All of this is about trying to make us better as employees, as leaders, as colleagues. Okay, so then the next group is the visionary. And the visionary sees the big picture. And they communicate that big picture clearly to their team. And that's great because when everybody shares the vision, then it helps us get where we're going to go. I've said forever, you may have heard me say it before, there's some things about the book that I think are great, and goodness only knows I am envious of the sales that the book Good to Great generated. I mean, what author wouldn't want that kind of sale, right? But I think the thing about the people on the bus being more important than where the bus is going is the dumbest thing I've heard. One of the two dumbest things I've heard in business. The other one is the Simon Sinek thing about why. People don't buy your why, they buy your how. The why is important to you, not important to your customers. He's wrong there. Customers don't buy your why. Customers buy your how. Okay. The people on the bus are more important than where the bus is going. Well, getting the right people on the bus is what I said. Getting the right people on the bus in the right seats is more important than where the bus is going. And that's ridiculous because the right people wouldn't get on a bus if they didn't know where the bus was headed. Right? Would you get on a bus that the front said somewhere? Oh, I mean, we got to know where the bus is going before we're going to get on the bus. And that's a fundamental key for all of us is we've got to have and share the vision. If you're an entrepreneur, what's your vision of where this is going, of what's your vision of what the ultimate customer experience is? What's your vision of where you'd like your business to go and the vision of where you'd like your business to be? The visionary leader sees that vision with clarity and they communicate it to their team. And then there's the problem. They're so visionary, the details aren't taken care of. All they can see is the big picture, and they don't see the steps along the way that they have to take to get there. And so part of it unravels because the detail work isn't getting done. So the strength of the visionary is communicating where we're heading and this clarity that goes beyond the daily transaction. And the weakness is lack of attention to detail. Next, we have the affiliative. Now, as we said earlier, they emphasize harmony in relationships. They want everybody to get along. Not a bad thing, right? Who would be against all of us getting along? Unless it means that we worry so much about everybody getting along, we don't get the work done. Or we worry so much about everybody getting along that if you got a jerk as a part of the group, you're not willing to cut them loose. If you got a jerk that nobody wants to work with, you don't need to be emphasizing harmony. You need to get rid of who's not causing the harmony. And that's a hard decision to make. And if everything is on relationships, well, let's continue to work on him. Let's make her feel more welcome. Maybe there's look, at the end of the day, we've got a job to do. And there is a point beyond which the affiliative gets the job done. A similar thing with the participative. A similar thing with the participative. And Charles, yeah, you got it right. The visionary is the big idea people, but a lot of times they aren't the detail kind of people. And you got to have both, right? You got to have both. Participative is more like, well, let's collaborate and let's vote. Well, at the end of the day, I think about it in terms of my speaking with the little business that we have, right? And writing books and the things that I do. I can't come up with that by committee. It has to be my voice, right? I mean, I can't write a book by committee. Now, I want my team to be engaged as we market that and as we go out to the public to sell that. But there's a point where you can be so participative that you lose the essence of what creates distinction. I mean, somebody's got to be the boss, and she or he has to take the lead. So the strength of the participative is everybody feels engaged, but the weakness is sometimes there's a lack of direction. The pace setting is characterized by personal heroics. Personal heroics can be great because it means you are driven to achieve. The leaders we talked about earlier, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Herb Kelleher, others, that were just driven to achieve and be a pace setter. I was on a program a while back with Kathy Ireland, and she was talking about what she did to create, she wasn't taken seriously, and what she did and to make the name for herself as something other than a supermodel and that. But yet sometimes when that's the key, when that person is gone, what happens to the business? I think there was a church, the first time I lived here in Las Vegas, there was a church that my late wife and I went to. And the minister of that church had built this congregation into this huge, 3,000 people or so church that started as just a regular, very small church. Amazing speaker, brilliant insight. I mean, I look forward every Sunday to hearing just how he was thinking and what he was talking about. And then all of a sudden, in a big surprise to everybody, he decided he didn't want to do that anymore. He didn't want to be in Las Vegas. He didn't want to work for that church. He just didn't want to be there anymore. And so he makes that announcement. And, here's a big congregation. And he said, look, if the reason that you came here was solely because of me, then I have failed. Because my goal was to create a church that people would continue to be a part of, that this would be sustainable. And then he's gone. And the next Sunday, there were about 2,000 there, not 3. And the next Sunday, there was about 1,000 there, not 3. And it really struck me that even though this particular minister said the right things, it's not about me, his picture was on everything. And it was almost like, it wasn't, the denomination church. It was the preacher's name church. It was almost personality driven. Now, smart guy, incredible thinker, great speaker, but the leadership style left the church in the lurch for a while. And that's what pace setting can do. Now, pace setting isn't always bad. I mean, it says personal heroics, and we tend to think, well, that's very self-centered a little bit. But sometimes it requires that, right? I mean, I think Apple would have gone bankrupt had it not been Steve Jobs's pace-setting drive. But yet, as we also know, there was a downside to that too. That was a two-sided coin. So even with pace setting, part of what we have to do is to make certain that we keep our ego in check and that we practice that self-awareness that we've been talking about. Yeah, I tried fixing them, right? It doesn't work. Well, and you remind me, there's a great line in the speech that Jim Rohn, the late great Jim Rohn, used to give. And he said, I told myself I was going to fix these people if it killed me. And he says, and I almost died, right? Because you can't fix people. You can help them fix themselves. Right? You could be the catalyst. It's like I've said, there's no such thing as a motivational speaker. If there was a motivational speaker, then every person in the audience would be motivated, right? It is a motivational speaker, right? I mean, if I am the water speaker and I've spread water throughout the audience, everybody's getting wet, right? If I'm the motivational speaker and I'm spreading motivation, then everybody should get motivated. But we know that doesn't happen. And why? Because the speaker isn't motivational. The speaker is a catalyst. That somewhere along the way, people get the idea and change themselves, or they decide to do better themselves. And that's the same thing, I think, with leadership, is that leaders can't fix people. They can't change people. They set the table so that you can accomplish more yourself. Oh, which leads us to the sixth style, which is coaching. And coaching focuses on long-term development and mentoring. Man, that sounds perfect, doesn't it? Yeah, but if all you're doing is focusing on long-term development and mentoring, who does what needs to be done today? So coaching is a wonderful thing, but it has to be in the right framework, because I mean, there's stuff that's got to be done in my business today, and I know it's the case with yours too. Well, if all I'm doing is thinking about the long-term development, and by the way, it also begs the question, people don't stay in their jobs as long as they used to. Man, many years ago when I first started speaking, a lot of my early speeches as I was trying to build my business was companies would have these annual dinners and they would honor the retirees. And they would give the gold watch for people that have been there 25 years and 30 years. I've done programs where people have worked for the company for 40 plus years for the same company. We don't see that very much anymore. There aren't these long-time retirement banquets anymore. So if we're coaching for long-term development, at some point, somebody's going to say, are we training our competition's employees in the long run? Because they're going to leave us and go somewhere else, or they're going coaching is a wonderful thing. It's an important thing, but there's downsides to that as well. So as we've seen, whether it's directive or visionary or affiliative or participative or pace setting or coaching, there's positives and negatives to each side. There is no best style. Each style has its strengths and its weaknesses. I like this quote. The good news about achievers is that when given a goal, they pull out all the stops. Even if that goal is to manage their achievement drive, whatever it might be. If you're an overachiever, now notice, if you're an overachiever and you fit into one of those styles, you can very easily be guilty of overdoing it. And the problem is not, I talked about this the other day. We often think about the positive and negative as if they're polar opposites, and typically they're not. It's a thin line of perception. Every group I've ever had says we want our leaders to be confident. And every group I've ever worked with this on has said we don't want to follow somebody conceited. Well, is conceit the polar opposite of confidence? No, of course not. Conceit is when we take confidence too far. So what we have to watch as leaders is where that fine line is, and how we can be aware enough, right? Well, there you go, Weldon. See, you're the exception that proves the rule here. Yeah, it's perfect. My biggest challenge is learning when each of these styles is appropriate, right? And Mike, you've hit on the next thing I was going to hit before we finished up, which is I don't think any of us are in a single style. I think that one of two things happen. Either we have more than one style, it's just a part of who we are. I mean, that's I think my case. I mean, I would say, I hope I'm halfway accurate on this, I would say that I'm partly visionary because I see where I want us to go and I've got this big picture idea, but I'm also affiliated because I want everybody to get along. And I realize at times I have to be pace setting, right? So, I mean, we adapt and adopt to the situation. The problem is when we don't see the downside of it. I used to do the 4 styles, the 4 communication styles, personality styles. I have my own formula for that. But one of the things I said is there's 3 aspects to observable personality. Now, I'm not talking about, the psychological factors of, was your childhood happy and that kind of thing, which is important aspects in psychological makeup. But as sales professionals or as managers, as leaders, we can only respond to the behavior that we observe. And so there were 3 aspects, and those 3 are force. How forcefully do you communicate? Do you tend to be a forceful communicator, or do you tend to be a little more soft-spoken? Those are variables, neither good nor bad, just different. Conformity. Are you going to make certain that everybody gets along? Are you going to march to the beat of your own drummer? Right? That's part of it. And so the 4 styles come from that, that matrix about conformity and force. And then there's a third factor that isn't discussed enough, and that's flexibility. Because there's some people that they hear the style and they go, oh, that one style, that is me. And then there's some folks that look at all 4 communication styles, whether you're talking about DISC or whatever format you're talking about. They'll look at the 4 of them and go, man, I see myself in all of those 4. And there's a name for that. It's called schizophrenic. No, it's not. It's called versatile, right? You got a high degree of versatility. And when you have that high degree of versatility, you shift based upon, Mike, to your point, what the situation is, right? I mean, what is the style appropriate for that particular time? The problem with versatility is you can be so versatile that people think you're phony. And that becomes a challenge. Curtis, you nailed it. Yeah, we've got to evaluate our individual strengths and then the appropriate style that fits best. And Donovan, yeah, and part of the time, I mean, I've got to back off from my style part of the time to make certain that I'm working with other folks as well. Thanks, Charles. I appreciate that. How did you come up with your personality styles from on Distinction Nation? It was through research. I found some things that I thought could be tweaked with some of the other ways that styles were presented. And I also wanted it to be very basic in terms of something that was easy to understand. And, I've found that I could remember if someone was a genial. I could remember if someone was a controller because they're very controlling. I had a harder time remembering, what color they were, or were they a high D, or were they so I was just trying to find my own path on that I could, and if you don't know what Charles is talking about, by the way, it's coming down in about 4 days. So if you haven't downloaded on distinctionnation.com. If you haven't downloaded our free audio program on how to create personal distinction, you just need to go to distinctionnation.com. Make sure you download it because it's going to be coming off in just a few days. But that's what he's talking about. There's a program there where you take a survey that helps you determine your style, and is your priority congruent with your style, congruent with your goals. And I was telling Tammy last night, somebody mentioned, I love the line, it's like a chiropractor for your profession and your personal life. It gets you in alignment. So that's what it's about. So the final question I'll ask you as we get out of here today is, what are your motives? How self-aware are you? And one of the best things that you can do is ask other people, right? But most of us only look for the response that tells us what we want. I mean, most of us don't want to hear that we're not self-aware. That's really hard to hear. So seek feedback from those who have no agenda. There are some folks that are going to blow smoke, and there's some folks that are they want to put you down because it makes them feel better. You know who I'm talking about. So seek information from those who have no agenda. They'll help you most. Talk about somebody that I would seek help from. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. You're the best. Thank you very much. And well, to keep me posted, I'd love to know when you get that done and what you think of it. Hey, everybody, that's all for us for today for Daily Distinction. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for watching. And I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow again at the same time for the next edition of Daily Distinction.